I never thought I'd end up working in a seafood shop that smelled like salt and regret, but life doesn't really ask for your permission when it kicks you sideways. After my wife died 3 years ago, leukemia, brutal and fast, I quit everything. The house we bought in Colombia became unbearable. Every hallway echoed her laugh, and every room reminded me of what was gone. I packed up Caden, my boy, and moved us to St. Martin, a tiny town with a river that split it in half like a scar. Carter's seafood outlet wasn't glamorous. It was a converted gas station off County Road 62, known mostly for frozen prawns, crawfish tails, and the occasional live blue crab tank. But it had hours I could work around Caden's school schedule, and they paid cash until my paperwork cleared. Most days it was me, Marla, and Reggie holding down the closing shift. It was honest work, unremarkable, until that night in June. Friday nights were always a little weird. The delivery truck came late, so Reggie and I usually stayed past close to rotate stock. Marla handled register and paperwork, grumbling about her ex-husband and chain smoking out back when no one was looking. It wasn't busy. Locals knew better than to buy seafood at 9 p.m. It was June 21st. Hot. The kind of thick heat that settled in your lungs and made you angry for no reason. I remember that night vividly, not just because of what happened, but because it started so normal. We closed at 10. At 9:34, I was restocking the freezer aisle when Marla popped her head in. "You see that guy walk in?" I shook my head. "Been back here all night." Well, he didn't say anything, just came in and sat down. Booth 4. Booth 4 was a leftover diner booth wedged next to the window. We kept it for old regulars who wanted to sip sweet tea and wait for their orders. I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped out to take a look. He was already seated, mid-40s, maybe 50. Thin but not frail, wore a plain white tee, gray windbreaker, old work boots, a green ball cap with the brim pulled low. He wasn't looking at the menu or the coolers, just sitting, like he'd been there all along. His hands were folded neatly on the table. Marla leaned in. "Creeps me out. He hasn't moved since he walked in." "You ask if he needs help?" "He didn't look at me." Reggie, walking in from the back with a case of frozen shrimp, looked over. "Dude looks like a scarecrow, someone dressed up for Sunday church." I stepped behind the counter and said loud enough to carry, "Evening, sir. Can I help you with anything?" No response. No movement. Reggie leaned close. "Think he's deaf?" "Maybe." I walked out from behind the counter, casually approaching the booth. I didn't want to spook him, especially if he was dealing with something mental or medical. "Sir," I said gently, "we close in about 20 minutes, but I can still get you something." He lifted his head. It wasn't a dramatic movement, just a slow tilt, chin angling up a fraction of an inch. I could see part of his face under the brim now. Pale, dry lips, thin cheeks. His eyes, on God, they looked like polished glass. No emotion behind them. Not angry, not confused, just blank. Then he smiled, not wide, not threatening, but slow, almost like he was relearning how. Every muscle moved too deliberately, like he'd practiced it in the mirror. "Sir," I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer, just raised one hand and pointed. Right at me. I stopped cold. "Are you okay?" He dropped his hand, turned his head back to the window, didn't say a word. I backed away and returned to the counter. "He pointed at me," I told Marla. "Just pointed." Reggie scoffed. "Man's tweaking, or heat stroke. I'll go tell him to leave." "No," I said too quickly. "Let's just wait a bit. He's not hurting anyone." 9:52. No movement. 9:59. Still nothing. Marla was gathering her things. "I'm locking the door. If he ain't out by 10:05, I'm calling Rusk." Officer Lionel Rusk was the town's main cop, part-time deputy, full-time cynic. At 10:02, Reggie flicked off the open sign. We gave it a couple minutes. Still, the man didn't move. "I'm calling," I said. Rusk picked up on the second ring. "Seafood shop again?" he said with a chuckle. "What's the issue?" "We've got a guy inside, won't speak. Been here a half hour." "You ask him to leave?" "He won't answer." I'll swing by. Rusk arrived at 10:14. We let him in, pointed toward the booth. Empty. Wait, I said, walking fast. No, he was right there. Booth 4 was vacant, seat cushions clean, no prints, no signs of someone leaving. I locked the door, Marla said. He didn't go past me. Rusk searched the place. Bathrooms, freezer room, loading dock, nothing. You sure this isn't just end-of-week nerves? Reggie stared at the booth. I swear to God he was real. Rusk looked mildly amused but said he'd log it. Maybe someone slipped out before the door was locked. Marla shook her head. No way. The next Friday I wasn't supposed to work, but our new hire called out and I needed the overtime. I didn't even think about it until Marla said, "It's booth 4 night again." She was joking, until 9:42. He's back, Reggie said quietly, staring at the monitor. Same dude. I didn't believe him. Walked out front, and there he was, sitting exactly the same way. Same jacket, same cap, same booth. At 9:51, the phone at the counter rang. Caller ID, internal line, back room. That phone didn't have an outside line. It was used for inventory calls during day shift. I picked it up, expecting static. Instead, I heard a voice. My wife's. Jordan? Software familiar. I knew it immediately. My heart nearly stopped. Hello? I whispered. The line clicked dead. When I ran to the back, no one there. I walked back out front. Booth 4? Empty, just like last time. I didn't tell anyone. Not then. How do you explain hearing the voice of someone who's been dead 3 years? The third Friday, I didn't show up. Called out sick. Marla texted me at 10:45. He looked at the camera this time. His smile was wider. I'm not coming in next week. We checked security footage. Every Friday, 9:42 p.m., he appears. He walks in, sits, then vanishes. No walking out, no glitches. One frame he's there. The next, nothing. We sent it to the manufacturer. They said it was data corruption. Rusk stopped laughing after he saw it. He came back a week later with a county detective. They took copies. Didn't say much. I quit a month later. I couldn't handle it. Not after the 5th visit. That Friday, the man didn't point at me. He pointed at the back. At the walk-in freezer. Later that night, we opened it. Found the old employee time card of Stanley Moore. Stanley worked there in the 90s. Disappeared in 1998. Never clocked out. The booth he used to sit in after his shift. Booth 4. Now I work maintenance at a high school. Caden's doing better. He sleeps through the night again. Sometimes, though, I drive past the old seafood shop. It's been closed for months now, but the lights still come on. Just on Fridays. Just at 9:42. And every once in a while, if you look through the side window, you can see him, still smiling, still waiting. For what? I don't know, and I don't want to find out. Story 2. I wasn't always the kind of person who jumps at shadows. I used to scoff at people who locked their doors in broad daylight or crossed the street just because someone walked behind them too long. I had grown up in Bridger, South Carolina, a sleepy coastal town known for its seafood shacks, Saturday flea markets, and high school football. The kind of town where people leave their keys in the ignition while they run into the post office. We weren't reckless. We just trusted our surroundings, trusted our people. I worked for most of my adult life at Danner's Seafood and Market, a locally owned prawns and specialty fish store that sat on the edge of Old Highway 6. It was the kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you needed to. A squat concrete building with faded lettering and a plastic crab nailed above the door, its claws pointing awkwardly in opposite directions. The floors always smelled like salt and lemon cleaner. The freezers buzzed like distant lawnmowers. And on most days, I liked it. It was steady work. I got to talk to people. I knew the regulars. I'm Rachel Tanner, 36 years old. I've been a single mom since my son, Micah, was 4. His dad took off to Texas after deciding the shrimp life wasn't for him. His words, not mine. He drove trucks for a few months, then disappeared into silence. We haven't heard from him in 6 years. And honestly, we're better for it. Micah is 9 now, Smart as hell, skinny as a broom handle and talks like a 60-year-old. He's always reading something. Marine animals, bugs, volcanoes. He once corrected his science teacher about the molting cycle of blue crabs. He's the best thing I've ever done. 3 months ago, something happened at Danner's that changed the way I see the world, changed the way I sleep, the way I breathe when I hear certain voices or footsteps or distant car doors. It was a Tuesday. Always a Tuesday, isn't it? We'd opened late that day. The morning shift had to restock after a delayed delivery. I usually work solo until noon. Then my coworker Luis came in to handle the counter while I took inventory in the back. Micah was with me. School was out for summer and I couldn't afford a sitter every week. Usually he sat behind the counter with his tablet and headphones. He knew better than to touch anything, and the regulars liked him. Called him store boss or Captain Cod. That day he'd brought his sketch pad. He was drawing prawns with rocket boosters. We opened at 10. The first 2 hours were slow. A couple of retirees bought crab legs for a boil. A tourist came in looking for oyster-flavored ice cream and left confused. It was around 11:45 when the man came in. He didn't look strange at first. That's the part I still replay. Nothing about him screamed danger. He was white, maybe late 40s, clean-shaven, wore a navy windbreaker and cargo pants, like someone who worked outside but didn't want to get dirty. He walked slowly, hands in his pockets, and didn't meet my eyes right away. Just did a slow loop of the store like he'd been here before. "Can I help you find anything?" I asked. He looked up, smiled a little. "Just browsing. Friend told me about this place. Best prawns in the county," I said automatically. He nodded. "That's what I heard." I went back to pricing the scallops. He moved quietly. No phone, no questions. Just meandered near the freezer section where we kept the bagged shellfish. Then something shifted. When I looked up again, I couldn't see Micah. His stool behind the register was empty. His sketch pad was open, but the seat was cold. "Micah," I called, trying to sound casual. "You in the restroom?" No answer. I walked around the counter, scanned the aisle. The man was still near the freezers, but he'd turned, facing the far back wall where the employee entrance was. And then I heard it, my son's voice muffled. "I don't think I'm supposed to be back here." It stopped me cold. I stepped around the counter and pushed through the beaded curtain that led to the prep area. There he was, Micah, standing just inside the cold room door, not moving. His arms were at his sides, his eyes wide behind his glasses, and the man, the same man, stood about 5 feet from him, one hand extended like he'd been gesturing to something. The other was in his pocket. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, stepping between them so fast my shoulder clipped a shelf. The man raised both palms. He asked what was back here. I said I'd show him where the prawns sleep. Wasn't trying to scare anyone. Micah looked at me, confused but not crying. He said there was a special tank with glow shrimp. I wanted to see. I didn't even respond to the man. I grabbed Micah's arm and pulled him behind me. "You don't work here," I said. He smiled again, calm, measured. "No, ma'am, just a customer." "You went behind the counter. That's not browsing." His smile twitched. "Didn't mean to upset anyone. Honest mistake." And then, just like that, he walked out. Past the curtain, through the store, out the front door. No panic, no guilt, just gone. Luis showed up 5 minutes later. I told him what happened, and he locked the doors. We called the police. Officer Kendra Simmons took our statement. Micah stayed silent most of the time, just held my hand. When she asked if the man had touched him, he shook his head no, but he didn't let go of me for the rest of the day. That night, I replayed the moment over and over. The man's posture, his tone, his calm. There was no panic, no rush. Like he knew exactly how long it would take before I noticed. Like he'd done it before. The footage was grainy, no clear shot of his face. He avoided every camera angle like a ghost. There was no license plate either, just a partial view of a blue Ford pickup leaving the gravel lot. Officer Simmons said they'd forward it to the county, but I knew they wouldn't find him, because 2 weeks later, it happened again. Not to us, but to another family. A woman named Teresa Lynn, someone I knew vaguely from church, came into Danner's with her niece. Said a man matching the same description approached her niece near the bathroom at a rest stop off I-85. Said he had a pet turtle in his truck. Said she could hold it if she was careful. Teresa found her before anything happened. Reported it. And guess what? Same blue Ford. No plates. It wasn't just a one-time thing. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. I started digging. Old local reports, online forums, Facebook mom groups. I found posts, dozens, across states. Kentucky, Georgia, North Carolina. Same type of man, same calm demeanor, same vanish into air ending. Never stayed in one place, never took anything. But I'm sure of one thing. He's practicing, he's perfecting, and he'll get it right one day if no one stops him. Now, Micah doesn't come to work with me. I leave him with my sister on weekdays. He still draws shrimp with rocket boosters, but he locks the bathroom door now. He checks the backseat of the car before he gets in. He notices shadows where there shouldn't be any. So do I. I watch every man who walks in alone. I count steps behind me. I check locks twice. I've got pepper spray in my apron and a hammer under the register. You can call me paranoid. I don't care. Because a week ago, just 1 week ago, Luis swore he saw someone watching the building from the tree line. Didn't come in, didn't drive away. Just stood there, still, waiting, like he always does. Story 3, I wasn't always a nervous person. I used to think I had a pretty balanced head on my shoulders. I didn't grow up in fear. My dad was a mechanic, my mom a nurse, and I grew up with a strong sense of caution, but not paranoia. I was the kind of woman who could go to the store without imagining 20 ways I might not come back. I believed in small-town safety, doors unlocked on summer afternoons, letting my son ride his bike up the hill without trailing behind him like a shadow. That was before I took the night shift at Lacey's Prawn and Seafood. Grand Bay, Alabama isn't the kind of place that ends up on a map unless you're looking real close. I moved here in early 2021 after my divorce finalized, packed what I could in a U-Haul, left Montgomery behind, and followed a Craigslist ad to a 2-bedroom rental over an old feed store. It smelled like mold and pine cleaner for the first 2 months, but it was quiet. That's what I thought I needed. Quiet. I got the job at Lacey's because I needed something flexible. My son Caleb was 10 at the time and spent most nights with his dad up in Mobile. The custody split had been lopsided, not because I was a bad mother, I want to make that clear, but because I couldn't afford the legal battle to prove otherwise. Working nights meant I could pick him up from school, spend the evenings with him when I had him, and then drive 20 minutes down 90 to the shop once he was asleep at his dad's. Lacey's was the kind of place most people ignored, unless it was crawfish season or they were hosting a fish fry. It sat in a dying strip mall next to a shuttered tanning salon and a liquor store with bulletproof glass. The fluorescent open sign in the window was half flickered out, and the building always smelled like bleach and brine. It was just me and Daryl, the owner, most nights. He was a gruff Vietnam vet in his early 70s, walked with a cane, and had a head full of conspiracy theories and a freezer full of shrimp. He couldn't work the register because of his arthritis, so I handled the front and cleaned the prep station when things were slow. He'd stay in the office with his old radio playing George Jones and surveillance monitors flickering in black and white. The first time I saw the man, it was a Wednesday, late August, around 1:35 a.m. I remember the time because I'd just locked the front doors for the night. We were a 24-hour place on paper, but Daryl always made the call when to shut down if it got too quiet. He was asleep in the back, and I was finishing up the bleach buckets near the seafood case. The knock on the glass was soft. 2 taps. I turned, thinking maybe I'd imagined it, but there he was, standing just outside the glass doors. Pale skin, red flannel shirt buttoned all the way up, jeans too clean for the neighborhood. No car in the lot, no sound of footsteps, just him, staring through the glass like he expected me to open up. I shook my head and mouthed, "Closed," then turned back to finish wiping down the counter. Tap, tap, tap. Louder this time, not pounding, just firm. I turned again. He hadn't moved, still staring, no expression. His face wasn't strange or scary. That's what stuck with me. He looked like a man you'd see in a dentist's waiting room. Just quiet. His hair was buzzed close, his eyes light. I couldn't tell if they were blue or gray, but they didn't blink much. I didn't open the door, just pointed to the closed sign and walked away. He didn't knock again. When I looked back, he was gone. I thought it was weird. Told Daryl about it the next morning. He just grunted and said, "Should have called the cops. Folks around here ain't always right in the head." But he didn't check the cameras. Didn't seem worried. A week went by. Then two. Then it happened again. Same time, almost to the minute. 1:33 a.m. this time. I was restocking the bait fridge near the back when the knock came. Two quick taps, then one longer drag like someone sliding their palm across the glass. I didn't go to the door right away. This time I watched from behind the aisle of tackle boxes and plastic gloves. He stood just like before. Red flannel, blank face, staring inside. I waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. He didn't knock again, just stood there. Still. Then he stepped back, out of frame. I ran to the side window, tried to see where he went. Nothing. No movement. No car. No sound. I stayed in the break room until dawn. The third time I called the police. They came, did a quick drive-through, took my statement, said they'd add a patrol for the area, but they didn't seem too concerned. "Probably just a drifter," one of them said. "Maybe high. Don't engage next time." Daryl told me not to make a fuss, said we'd had loiterers before, but I could tell something had unsettled him. He didn't sleep in the office anymore. Started locking the back door with an extra deadbolt. Then one night in mid-September, Daryl didn't show up. That wasn't like him. He lived 2 blocks away. He'd survived Nam, a mugging in '96, and a minor heart attack on Memorial Day. The man was a cockroach with a limp. But when I unlocked the shop at midnight, his car wasn't in the back lot. His office light was off. I called, straight to voicemail. I tried to convince myself he'd forgotten, or maybe fell asleep early, but something felt wrong. So I stayed close to the front, kept the doors locked, lights on. At 1:31 a.m., the lights in the freezer section began to flicker. That section never flickered. I walked toward it slowly, heart hammering. Then I saw it, a smudge on the freezer glass, a handprint, fresh, pressed from the inside. I dropped the mop and ran. Didn't even lock the front behind me, just sprinted to my car, shaking as I jammed the keys into the ignition. I drove straight to the sheriff's station, told them everything, about the man, the visits, the handprint. They sent someone to check. Daryl was found dead in his home that morning, collapsed in the hallway. Heart failure, natural causes. But when they looked through the surveillance footage from the night before, they saw something else. At exactly 1:33 a.m., the freezer camera blinked out. 2 minutes later, it came back on. The handprint was there. No one ever entered the building. The doors never opened. No alarms, no motion sensors. Just a handprint from the inside. I quit the next day. Didn't wait for my last paycheck. Packed up, left Grand Bay behind. Found a job at a diner up in Tennessee where the lights don't flicker and the freezers stay locked. I never found out who he was. The man in the red flannel. The cops stopped returning my calls after a while. Said there was no crime, no evidence, nothing they could follow up on. But sometimes when I'm walking out to my car after a late shift, I still feel it. That weight in the air, that silence, that moment right before something knocks twice on glass. I don't work night shifts anymore, and I don't buy frozen shrimp. Some stories don't end with answers. Some just end with the lights going out, and a man in red waiting by the freezer. Story 4, I never planned on working in seafood. If you asked me 3 years ago what I'd be doing at 29, I probably would have said finishing a master's degree, maybe teaching literature somewhere with cold winters and coffee shops on every block. But life's funny, or cruel. Depends on your lens. I moved back to Baylock, Louisiana in 2022 after my mom's stroke. She wasn't the same after, and my sister had 3 kids in no time. So I packed up from Baton Rouge, took a leave from school that turned into a full withdrawal, and moved into the house I swore I'd never live in again. Mom passed in early 2023, quietly, thankfully, and I stayed. Not out of obligation anymore. More like inertia. That's when I took the job at Bayview Prawns and Seafood, this squat little store off Highway 11, wedged between a tire shop and an old Dollar Tree that hadn't had running water since I was in high school. It smelled like salt, bleach, and shrimp shells. The pay sucked, but the work was predictable. And after everything, I craved predictable. My boss, Marcy Bell, owned the place. Early 60s chain smoker voice, hard as oyster shell on the outside but soft where it counted. She knew my family, gave me the job without asking too many questions. "You've been through it," she said, handing me my apron on day one. "This place will keep your hands busy. Might help your head too." Maybe it did. For a while, we were open 6 days a week, closed Sundays for church and rest. I usually worked the afternoon to close shift with another guy named Eric Cruz, who was ex-military and talked more to the fish than to me. We cleaned, prepped, weighed orders, and handled the late deliveries from the coast. Baylock wasn't exactly booming, so most nights we saw more crawfish than customers. The store closed at 8 p.m. sharp. By 9 o'clock, we'd clean the counters, drain the tanks, bleach the floors, and lock up. Then we'd both step out into the warm, wet Louisiana night and head off in opposite directions, never really talking unless something broke. But then came July 18th, a Thursday. That was the night everything changed, and I haven't been the same since. That day started like any other. Marcy left early, something about her sister's surgery down in Slidell. So it was just me and Eric. Heat hung heavy in the air, the kind that soaks into your bones even if you're standing still. I was elbow deep in tiger prawns when the power flickered around 4:45 p.m. Not out, just a flicker, like the building blinked. "Did you see that?" I asked. Eric, across the room, was hosing down a crab tank. He looked up, wiped his hand on his apron. "Yeah," he said flatly. "Probably grid strain again. Baylock's been running AC like it's hell's waiting room." I nodded and went back to work. We had 3 orders that night. 1 call-in, 2 walk-ins. Light day. One guy picked up a cooler of blue crabs and left a $5 tip. The second was a regular named Noreen who always asked if we had anything fresh enough to twitch. She left by 7:30. By 7:45, it was just me and Eric again, finishing up the close. I was scrubbing down the back sink when I heard something. Not loud, just out of place. A splash. Not a small drip, but a full splash, like someone dropped a cantaloupe into one of the tanks. I turned toward the display tanks out front. "You dropped something?" I called. Eric didn't answer. I dried my hands and walked up front. He wasn't there. Neither was anything else, really. Nothing moved. The tanks were bubbling like normal. Everything looked in place, except one thing. Tank 6, the one closest to the front windows, was drained almost halfway, but not leaking, just less water. And floating in the center, swirling slowly, was a single white shell, not from our stock. Looked more like a clam or something. We didn't sell clams. "Eric," I called again, more edge in my voice. "In the back," he called from the dry storage room. I glanced once more at the tank, then walked back. He was stacking boxes. "You drain one of the tanks?" I asked. He looked up, brow creased. "Number Y?" I hesitated. "Tank 6 is low. Weird shell in it." Eric put down the box and followed me. When we reached the tank, he frowned. "That wasn't like that 10 minutes ago." "You sure you didn't?" "I'm sure." We stood in silence for a second, staring at the tank. Then we both heard it. A knock. From inside the tank. 3 times. Slow, hollow, deliberate. We both backed up. "What the hell?" I whispered. Eric stepped forward, tapping the glass. Nothing. He looked at me. "Drain's fine. No leaks. I'd say maybe air pockets, but..." Another knock. Not from the same tank. From the one beside it. Then the next. Knock. 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 Like something was moving between them, below the waterline. Eric muttered something in Spanish under his breath, backing up. I stepped to the side, trying to get a better angle on the water, and then I saw it. A shape, pressed against the inside glass of the last tank. Human hand, palm flat. Too long, fingers like bone. I staggered back. Eric! But he was already moving. He grabbed the crowbar we kept near the back sink and yanked open the emergency drain on that last tank. The water gurgled out fast. By the time it hit halfway, the hand was gone. Gone. Just air bubbles and shrimp tails. We locked up 10 minutes early that night. Didn't talk. Didn't look at the tanks again. The next day, I asked Marcy if she'd ever had tank issues. She lit a cigarette and narrowed her eyes. Why? I hesitated. Tank 6 drained weird. Thought I saw something. She stared at me for a beat, then slowly sat down. That tank's old, she said finally. Built into the slab. Was part of the place before I bought it. Used to be a bait shop in the 80s. Real low-rent operation. I nodded, unsure what I was hearing. They pulled a body out of there in '89. Local boy, 19, vanished. They say he was dumped, but... She trailed off. But what? Marcy exhaled. It's just an old place, Isaac. Buildings hold things. Water holds more. I didn't ask her to explain. We kept working. Because what else were we supposed to do? But over the next few weeks, things got worse. The tanks would rearrange themselves. I'd leave the mantis shrimp in tank 4, find them in tank 1 the next morning. Things went missing. A box of gloves. A fillet knife. The air smelled off, like seawater and bleach mixed with something rotting. Eric started staying late. Not because he wanted to. He just refused to leave me alone. You ever think maybe this place is haunted? He asked one night, whispering even though we were alone. I don't know what it is, I answered, but it's not normal. That night we both heard it, singing from the cooler, like a child, just a hum. When Eric opened the cooler, there was nothing inside, except a message, scrawled in frost. Come back. August 3rd was the last night. We were closing. I was wiping the scales down. Eric was draining the main tank when I heard something behind me. Not a knock. A voice. Isaac. I turned. No one. Eric? I called. No answer. The tanks were boiling now. Not bubbling. Boiling. Foam and all. The water hissed. Then I saw her. Not Mara. Not a ghost. Her. A woman standing barefoot on the back counter, water running from her skin, hair soaked down her back. Eyes black. Mouth open. No sound. I couldn't move. She raised her hand, pointed at the tank. Behind me. I turned just as the glass shattered. Water everywhere. Prawns on the floor, and beneath them, something pulling itself out of the tank. Human but not. Gray. Too long. Rib bones like branches. I ran. So did Eric. We never went back. The store shut down the next week. Marcy said it was due to health violations. They never reopened. They bulldozed the building 2 months later. Sometimes I still dream about that night. Sometimes I wake up soaked in salt water. And once, just once, I heard a knock at my apartment door. 3 slow knocks. When I opened it, no one was there. But down the hall, wet footprints led away. Barefoot, small. She's not done. Not yet. And I don't think she ever left that tank. She just found a new one. Me. Story 5. I never imagined I'd spend my 17th birthday locked in a seafood freezer behind a prawn store, listening to something scrape against the metal racks like it was looking for me. But before I get to that, let me explain how I ended up there. My name's Elijah Carter. I was born in Valdosta, Georgia, but I've lived all over the Southeast. My mom bounced between boyfriends, jobs, and evictions so fast, I don't think I ever unpacked a full suitcase until I was 15. That was the year she got arrested for stealing Oxy from a Walgreens. I ended up in the system. Foster care roulette. The state eventually dropped me off in Cedar Shoals, South Carolina. Population, maybe 8,000. 1 post office, 1 dentist, 1 gas station, and 1 seafood market that doubled as a lunch counter for truckers heading toward Charleston. That was Sandbar Seafood. I started working there part-time after school, cleaning buckets, sorting inventory, sometimes manning the register if it wasn't busy. It was a small 2-story brick building near the edge of town, right off Route 65. The windows were always fogged up with brine and steam, and the whole place smelled like salt, lemons, and thawed shrimp. I took the job because it paid under the table and let me disappear for a few hours after school. My foster situation wasn't terrible. Miss Karen was one of the kind ones. But I never felt like I belonged in that floral-scented glass coffee table kind of house. I didn't fit in with the people at school either. I kept my head down, worked my shifts, saved what little I could. Sandbar was run by a man named Russell King. Vietnam vet, mid-60s, wore overalls every day and spoke in a voice like gravel and whiskey. He didn't talk much, but he trusted me, gave me keys, taught me how to fix the old ice machine out back, let me clock extra hours on weekends when the big shipments came in. Stay out of the cold room, he told me my first week. We only use that for bulk storage now. Compressor's touchy. I didn't argue. That room was at the far end of the back hallway, past the break room and the mop closet. I only ever saw it once. Big steel door, padlocked, no window. Russell kept the key on a chain around his neck. I figured he had his reasons. Then came July 3rd, one day before my birthday, one day before everything changed. It was a Friday, hot enough to melt the paint off the delivery truck. I was doing a double shift because Maria, the other part-timer, had gone to Myrtle Beach with her cousin. We were short-staffed. Just me and Russell, plus this new guy, Shane, who'd started that Monday. Shane was 19, ex-wrestler build, tattooed arms, and the kind of guy who said bro in every sentence. Russell left around 6 p.m. to run to the bank before it closed. Said he'd be back in an hour. "You lock up if I'm not," he said, tossing me the front door key. "Don't let Shane screw anything up." Got it. It was quiet for a while. I wiped down the prep counter, mopped near the lobster tank, and ate half a plate of hush puppies left over from the lunch rush. That's when Shane walked in from the back, looking pale. "Hey," he said, "you ever been in the cold room?" I shook my head. Russell told me not to. "Well," he scratched his chin, "we're out of jumbo prawns. Pretty sure there's a box in there. I saw the invoice." "Then ask Russell." "He's not answering. Cell goes straight to voicemail." That wasn't unusual. Russell still used a flip phone and treated it like a landline. "I don't know, man," I said. "That room's padlocked." "Was." He smirked and held up the bolt and a busted lock. "You broke it open?" "Chill. I'll fix it before he's back. Just help me grab the box." I should have said no. Should have stayed out front. But it was late. I was tired, and I didn't want to argue. We walked down the hallway together. The air got colder the farther we went. That hallway always had a weird smell, like bleach and pond water. But tonight it was stronger. Shane pulled the door open. Inside was darker than I expected. The overhead bulb flickered like a dying flashlight. Metal shelves lined the walls stacked with old boxes labeled in fading Sharpie. It smelled off, like something had died in there a long time ago. "Go left," Shane said. "Should be near the back." I stepped inside, hugging my arms. The air was thick with frost. I turned a corner, but heard the door slam shut behind me. Hard. I spun around. "Shane?" No answer. I ran to the door. No handle. Just a slick metal plate. My breath came out in thick clouds. "Shane, open the door!" Still nothing. I pounded with both fists, yelling, begging. Then I stopped. Something wasn't right. The shelves around me were shaking, very softly, like something was moving behind them. I backed away slowly. A low sound reached my ears, wet and dragging, like someone pulling a rope soaked in mud. It echoed, bounced around the freezer. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Then I saw it. A hand. Not human. Long, gray, fingers too thin, like fish bones wrapped in meat. It reached out from behind a crate, groped the air like it was feeling for heat. I didn't breathe. The thing slid into view. Crawling, not like a person, but like it had never stood upright in its life. Its skin was translucent in places, like frozen jellyfish. No face. Just a round, pulsing maw in the center of its head, lined with tiny teeth that clicked like shrimp tails breaking. I screamed. Loud. It lunged. I dove between shelves, crawling on my elbows, fingers freezing against the floor. I shoved boxes behind me, made a barricade. The thing slammed into it, let out a sound like boiling water. And then I heard a voice outside the door. Elijah, Russell. Back wall, I screamed. It's in here. The thing is... Crack. The door flew open. Russell stood there holding a crowbar and a flashlight. Move! I scrambled out. Russell slammed the door shut behind me and jammed the crowbar into the handle bracket. What the hell was that? I gasped. But Russell didn't answer. His face was pale, sweating. You saw it? I asked. He nodded. Didn't think it was still alive. He didn't explain much. Just locked the coal room again, this time with a heavy chain, and told me not to come in on Monday. I didn't. The next time I went by Sandbar, the place was closed. Permanently. Paper over the windows. For sale sign on the lot. No one could tell me what happened. Not the mayor, not Miss Karen, not even Shane, who, by the way, disappeared that same night. Never came back for his backpack. Cops said maybe he skipped town. I know better. I looked up the building's records. Before it was a prawn store, it was a seafood processing center. Shut down in 1982 after an incident. No one would tell me what the incident was, but I remember the cold. I remember the smell, and sometimes in my dreams I still hear the teeth clicking. Story 6. I don't consider myself easily spooked. I'm a single mother, 36, raised in Gulf County, and living just outside Gadsden, Florida, about 40 minutes west of Tallahassee. I've handled mold in the walls, dead car batteries in the rain, a custody hearing with my ex that drained me down to the marrow, and 2 months without hot water when Ava was still a toddler. Life doesn't exactly ask if you're ready. You just deal with what shows up. My name's Lena McGrath. I have 2 kids, Mila, who's 15 and going through the whole everything sucks phase, and Connor, who just turned 10 and wants to be a marine biologist but can't swim. Their dad, Travis, packed up and moved to Clearwater with some woman he met at a tile-laying job. He sends birthday cards sometimes, usually late. We live in a beige duplex off Cooley Road, the kind that always smells faintly like someone else's dinner. Rent's manageable, schools are decent, and I work part-time evenings at a local seafood market/prawn store called Dockside Provisions, right off Highway 12. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. Dockside Provisions is weird. Half fresh seafood counter, half dry goods store. Picture buckets of frozen shrimp next to half-price dog food, racks of sweatshirts with Gulf Strong and peeling vinyl letters, and those dusty stands of beach sunglasses nobody ever buys. They expanded from a bait shop 2 years ago and kept adding aisles until it felt like a maze of mismatched intentions. But the pay is slightly above minimum wage, and I can bring home unsold crab legs if they're going bad. My shift usually runs from 2:30 p.m. to 9. I stock, I clean, I help old folks find where we moved the lemon juice this week. My coworker, Denny, handles the seafood counter. Older guy, retired Navy, talks like his throat's made of gravel. We've got a manager named Callie, mid-40s, always reading some murder mystery behind the counter when it's slow. And it's always slow after 8. I've done 100 of these closing shifts, and until that Thursday in late September, nothing had ever made me question the routine. But that night, something was off. From the very start, the air had that sticky, pre-storm feeling. Sky was bruising purple near the horizon as I pulled into the back lot. The security light above the rear entrance kept buzzing, cutting in and out like a bad heartbeat. I clocked in, tied my apron, and walked past Bay 9, the farthest back refrigerated aisle where we keep frozen prawns, squid, and specialty catches. It was colder back there than usual. I remember thinking the freezer vents must have been overcorrecting for the heat outside. The hum had a deeper rattle to it. Feel like a damn meat locker in here, I muttered. I stocked shelves for about an hour while Denny wrapped up a bulk order of mussels for a local caterer. At around 6:15, I texted Mela to remind her about homework and told Connor to keep his tablet volume low. I got a thumbs-up emoji and a blurry picture of our cat, Peaches, sleeping on a laundry pile. Normal. By 7:30, the store had thinned to a trickle. A couple tourists came in for tackle bait, and a trucker bought 2 packs of sardines and a lottery ticket. Then came him. I noticed him first by the reflection. Bay 9 has an old convex mirror bolted up in the far corner for loss prevention. I was restocking canned chowder near aisle 7 when I caught movement. Just a flicker, a figure standing perfectly still between the freezer doors, backlit, blurred, watching. I turned to look directly. Nobody. I walked the length of the aisle, poked my head into bay 9. Empty. Maybe I imagined it. Shadows and mirrors can play tricks when you're tired. I shook it off, made a quick round to the front to check in with Callie, who was flipping through a worn-out Sue Grafton paperback, and then circled back to the seafood cases. And that's when I saw the prawns. Or didn't. There's a top-shelf freezer bin in Bay 9 reserved for bulk orders. 5-pound bags of frozen tiger prawns, usually sold to restaurants. We always keep them front-facing, stacked tight, labels out. Neat. But the stack was crooked. 3 bags sat at an awkward angle, and behind them like someone had nudged them aside. Space. Just black space. A small gap where the frost hadn't yet formed back. Like someone had been reaching back there. And the worst part? There were footprints, bare ones, small, human, damp with condensation, leading away from the case and disappearing near the staff-only door that leads into dry storage. I called out, "Hey, anybody back there?" Nothing. I walked to the back door, knocked. "Denny?" No answer. I pulled out my phone. It was 8:02. Callie's voice came faintly over the PA system. "Lena, customer at the counter wants to know if we carry scallops." I backed away from the storage door and returned to the front. Old man, gray shirt, clearly drunk, slurring about how seafood prices are a conspiracy. I tried to smile through it, nodded, and told him we were out of scallops. He shuffled out, muttering. I glanced toward Bay 9 again, just aisles and the buzz of fluorescence. At 8:40, I went to finish the freezer rotation, just 20 minutes until closing. As I walked past Bay 7, I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Very soft, wet, not metal on metal. More like skin on plastic, slow, purposeful. Coming from inside Bay 9. I rounded the corner. No one there. But the freezer door, one of the vertical stand-ups, not the bin, was open, only slightly, like a couple inches. A thin trail of fog seeped out onto the floor. One of the prawn bags lay on the ground, busted open. Frozen crustaceans scattered like teeth across the tile. I took a shaky breath, bent down slowly to gather them. Then something moved behind the glass. I swear on my children, I saw a face. Inside the freezer, half obscured by frost. Pale, watching, eyes wide, mouth slack, not moving. Just there. I screamed and fell backwards. Callie came running, seconds later. Denny too, hands wet from cleaning out the crab tank. I pointed, breathless. In there. Someone's in there. The freezer. Face. I saw. They opened the door. Fog billowed. Empty. Nothing but racks of shrimp, sealed bags, and cold air. Callie looked at me like I'd had too much wine on break. I swear, Callie, there were footprints earlier. And a face. I know what I saw. Denny crouched, inspecting the dropped prawns. These didn't fall. They were pulled. Look at the tear. Callie frowned. We're locking up. I'll check the cameras in the morning. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face behind the fog. Not aggressive, not angry, just waiting. I went back to work the next evening. Same routine, same buzz, same cold back aisle. At 7:23 p.m., Bay 9's freezer door was cracked again. Same angle. And this time, no prawn bags were disturbed, but a single red thread hung from the inside handle, like a thread from a hoodie. We don't sell clothing with hoods. I checked the inventory. At 8:11, I caught Denny staring into the convex mirror. I asked him what he saw. He didn't answer right away. Then he whispered, I've been seeing him too. I stayed 3 more weeks. Each time I closed, I found something new in Bay 9. A damp handprint on the glass. Scratches near the compressor hatch. Once, an entire bag of shrimp gone without a sale. Callie refused to escalate it. No proof. No break-ins. Nothing on camera. But the cameras near Bay 9, they always had static during key hours. Always. I finally quit after Connor woke up screaming one night. He said there was a man at his window, wearing a red hoodie, watching. We live on the second floor. I don't work there anymore. I took a job at a hardware store instead. Less money, more light. I avoid prawns now. Can't even look at a freezer case too long. Dockside Provisions is still open, still cheap, still cold. But if you ever find yourself near Gadsden, Florida, and step inside that weird little hybrid prawn store with the flickering lights, don't linger in Bay 9. And if you see the door slightly cracked, don't open it, because he's still there, waiting. And next time, he won't be behind the glass. Story 7. I never wanted to work in seafood. It's not the smell, it's the feel of it. The cold slime of shrimp under your gloves, the way fish stare up from the ice like they died mid-sentence. But jobs in Silver Ridge, North Carolina, don't exactly line up outside your door, especially when you're 19, don't have a degree, and your mom's cancer came back 6 months ago. The prawn store was called Reed's Seafood Market. It sat off Highway 70, about half a mile past the old paintball range that turned into a dog grooming place. Reed's wasn't fancy, just a long, low building with blue trim, a faded crab mural on the side, and a red neon sign that buzzed constantly, even when the store was closed. I got the job in late July after my second interview at Waffle House went nowhere. I wasn't excited about it, but the hours were steady, and the owner, Mr. Reed, paid in cash, off books. I worked the closing shift, 4 days a week, 3 p.m. to 10:30. Sweep the tile, restock the ice trays, prep orders for next day deliveries. Sometimes I helped unload trucks if the morning crew got backed up. Mostly I worked alone after 7 p.m. That was fine by me. I like silence. At home, silence was rare. My mom was on her second round of chemo. It made her angry. She was never an angry woman before. But the meds twisted her up, made her voice sharp. I didn't blame her. It just wore me down. My little sister Josie was 12 and trying her best to hold things together. She made frozen lasagna and wiped counters and waited by the phone whenever Mom got rushed to the ER again. So Reed's became my escape. Not joyful, not warm, but stable, predictable, until October, until he showed up. The first time I saw him was October 2nd. I remember because I just finished stacking a new shipment of frozen tiger prawns and was scraping ice from the delivery bay when the buzzer went off. I walked to the front. The store closes at 9, but I always left the door unlocked until 9:15 in case of late pickups. It wasn't uncommon, people coming from work, looking to grab dinner or bait before heading out on night fishing runs. He looked normal at first, a little tall, maybe 6'1", late 30s, weathered denim jacket, cargo pants, and a faded black baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He didn't say anything at first, just looked around the store like he was scanning the corners. Then he walked straight to the counter. "You still got wild caught?" he asked, voice flat, no accent I could place. "Yeah," I said, nodding. "Wild Gulf, 30 a pound." He didn't react to the price, just stood there a moment. "I'll take 1 pound." I weighed it, packed it, handed it across. He didn't make small talk, didn't ask about sauces or seasoning like most folks did. Paid cash, exact change, then left. Nothing scary, nothing odd. Except he never looked at the prawns, never glanced down, just kept staring at me the whole time, like he was memorizing something. That night, I found myself glancing out the back windows 3 or 4 times before locking up. The second time, 3 nights later, he came at the same time, 9:09 p.m. Same clothes, same exact order, 1 pound wild caught, exact change. But this time, after I handed him the bag, he said, "You always close alone." It wasn't the question that bothered me. It was how he asked it, like he already knew the answer, like he wasn't really curious. I forced a smile. "Depends." He nodded slowly. "Cold in here." Then he left. I told Mr. Reed the next day. "There's a guy that's been coming late," I said. "Gives me a weird feeling." Reed was in his 60s, short, round-bellied, with nicotine-stained fingers and one cloudy eye. You get weirdos in every business, he said. As long as he's paying, just be polite. Even if he's casing the place, Reed chuckled. Ain't worth robbing, son. We don't keep cash overnight. I let it drop. Maybe I was overreacting. Until the third time. October 10th. He came again. This time 9:02. Same outfit, same routine. But when I handed him the bag, he held it a second longer than he should have. You got a freezer in back? I hesitated. Yeah, walk in. Why? No reason. Then he smiled. It was the first time I saw his teeth. They were small, yellow, perfectly straight. It didn't look like a real smile, more like someone doing an impression of one. See you soon, he said. I didn't sleep that night. I kept picturing that freezer, the heavy metal door, the way sound didn't carry inside. I started locking up early after that, 8:45. I'd turn off the open sign and kill the exterior lights. Pretend like I was already gone if he pulled in. But he still came. I'd see his truck some nights, old white F-150, mismatched panels, dented side. He'd park across the road by the mulch lot and just sit there. Engine running, headlights off, watching. I wanted to tell someone. I almost called the police once. But what would I say? There's a guy who buys shrimp and looks at me weird? They'd laugh. Then came the night of the storm. October 18th. Rain like nails. Wind loud enough to shake the tin on the back roof. It was just after 9. I thought I was safe. No one in their right mind would be out in that weather. I was mopping behind the prep station when I heard it. Thump, not from the front, from above. The ceiling. Another thump. Then a low dragging sound like something heavy being pulled across plywood. I backed into the freezer, slammed the door, and locked it from the inside. Not logical, just instinct. My heart was pounding. The hum of the freezer drowned out the storm. I stayed there for 15 minutes, fists clenched, breath fogging in the cold. When I came out, everything was silent. But a wet trail led from the back hallway to the dry storage room, and the ladder to the crawl space above was down. I quit the next morning, told Reed I couldn't stay. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and told me to leave my key on the hook. But I couldn't stop thinking about it, so that night I went back. I parked across the road near the mulch pile and waited. 9 o'clock came, then 9:05. No lights in the store, no sign of him. Then at 9:12 I saw movement on the roof, just a shape, a silhouette, moving slow. I called 911. By the time the cops arrived, he was gone. But they found evidence, scuff marks in the dust above the ceiling tiles, empty food wrappers, a GoPro camera taped to a ceiling beam, facing down into the prep area, and a sleeping bag. He'd been living up there. They never caught him. The video on the GoPro had been wiped. No prints on anything. Just a hole in the roof where the vent cover had been pried off. The final detail came from the morning crew. They found a note inside the mop sink. It read, "You're not here tonight." Why? Nothing else. No name. Just that. I took a job at the grocery store after that. Bakery section. Bright lights, loud music, safe. But sometimes late at night, I still see that same white F-150 in distant parking lots. Just sitting there. Engine running. Waiting. Story 8, I never wanted to work at a seafood market. Not as a kid, not in high school, and sure as hell not at 30. But that's where I ended up, scrubbing prawn guts off stainless steel counters at 12:47 a.m., wondering where it all went wrong. My name's Cameron Ellison, born and raised in Bayfield, Louisiana, a foggy little town tucked up against the Gulf, where the air always smells like salt and something vaguely dead. Folks here don't move away. You either inherit a fishing boat, a liquor store, or a string of regrets. Me? I inherited debt. My dad was a shrimper. Tough man, stubborn. Died from a stroke when I was 26, right after his second mortgage bounced and the boat was seized. Mom moved in with my sister in Baton Rouge. I stayed behind trying to make sense of things. By 2020, I'd burned through my savings, 2 jobs, and a 6-year relationship with a woman named Marissa, who finally got tired of my potential and left. So when Bernie, this wiry old Cajun who ran a rundown prawn store on Route 82, said he needed someone for the night shift. I took it. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. Bernie's place was called Gulf Shore Prawns and More, but there wasn't much more about it. It was a squat cement block with faded blue trim, wedged between a vape shop and an abandoned tanning salon. Half the lights inside didn't work. The cooler ran loud enough to rattle your teeth, and the place always smelled faintly like bleach and rot. I worked the closing shift, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m., cleanup, inventory, and prep. Easy enough. The pay sucked, but Bernie paid cash under the table, which helped me keep the lights on without Uncle Sam knocking. I was 3 weeks in when it started. June 14th, 2023, 11:58 p.m. It was a slow Wednesday. The store had been dead since 10. I was cleaning the scale near the register when I heard it, the soft ding of the front doorbell. I looked up, confused. We locked the doors at 11:30, but there he was, a man, tall, dressed in a raincoat despite the dry heat. His face was pale, sickly almost, like he hadn't seen daylight in years. He had thin lips and a long nose, like something drawn by a child trying to describe a grown-up. But it was his eyes that stopped me. Dark, glassy, like he was looking through me, not at me. "Sorry, we're closed," I said. He didn't move, just stared. I started, but then I realized something. The door hadn't opened. The bell had rung, but I never heard the door. He stepped closer, not walked, just shifted, like a blink cut out the space between us. I backed up instinctively, hand going toward the baseball bat we kept under the register for break-ins. "What do you want?" I asked. He tilted his head slowly, then pointed. "At the prawns." "I want the red ones." I blinked. "The what?" He pointed again, same hand, slow. "The red ones, bottom shelf." There were no red prawns. Only one shelf of fresh stock sat in the display case, laid over crushed ice. All grayish-blue, raw, chilled, fresh off the docks that morning. I stared at it, then looked back at him. But he was gone. No sound. No footsteps. Just gone. The bell didn't ring. I went home rattled. Drank 3 beers in silence. Convinced myself I imagined it. I'd been working late, hadn't eaten. Maybe nodded off. But when I came back the next night, I found a wet footprint near the counter. Long, barefoot, as if someone had stepped in from the dock. Except we had no dock. We were 3 miles inland. June 18th, 12:32 a.m. He came back, same time, same entrance, same bell. But this time, I was ready. I had the bat in hand before he even took a step. "Don't come closer," I said. "I'll call the cops." He didn't stop. "I mean it," I shouted. He reached into his coat. I froze. He pulled out a card, laminated, handed it to me without a word. On the front was a red spiral, drawn with what looked like crayon. On the back, an address. No name, no logo. Just 173 Walker's Bend, June 19th, 1 a.m. "You'll understand soon." I dropped it like it burned. When I looked up again, he was gone. But in the ice tray, one prawn had turned red. Backstory I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? My friends? I barely had any left. My ex? Marissa would have laughed in my face. I tried telling Bernie, but he just looked at me like I was sniffing product. "This place gets in your head," he said. "You start seeing things. That's why I only hire folks that can keep to themselves." He said it like a warning, but I couldn't let it go. I looked up the address, 173 Walker's Bend. It was in town near the levee, an old Victorian house set back behind overgrown hedges. Abandoned, according to the county records. Had been since 2007, but something told me it wasn't empty. I didn't plan on going, but the card stayed in my glove box, like it wanted to be remembered. June 19th, 12:54 a.m. I sat in my truck, engine off, staring at the house. One dim light was on upstairs. I got out. The air smelled briny. Wrong, like low tide and something older underneath it. The porch creaked beneath me. The door was cracked open. I pushed it. Inside was silent. Dust motes floated in the beam from my flashlight. The walls were covered in old peeling wallpaper, spirals drawn into the fabric like they'd been scratched in with fingernails. And then I heard it, sloshing, wet, dripping. I followed the sound to the back of the house into the kitchen, and that's when I saw them. Prawns, thousands of them, dead, laid out across the floor, the walls, the counters, forming a spiral. In the center stood the man. His raincoat was gone. He wore something older now, tattered, salt-stained, his mouth open, too wide, too wrong. "You came," he said. "You belong." I ran, tripped over a pile of prawns, got up, scraped my palms bloody on the linoleum, and didn't stop running until I got to my truck. I never looked back. June 20th. Home. I quit, didn't give notice, didn't answer Bernie's calls, just stayed home and tried to forget. But something had changed. Every time I opened my fridge, I smelled salt. Every time I showered, I swore the water had that same low-tide taste. And then there were the cards, in my mailbox, under my door, even in the freezer, always the same spiral, always the same date, always another address. July 1st news broke. 3 people missing, all last seen near Walker's Bend. One of them was Bernie. They never found the house. Just an empty lot with dead grass and a trail of crustacean shells that led nowhere. Now it's been over a year. I moved to Shreveport. New name, new job, no seafood, ever. But I still see him sometimes, in reflections, in windows, in dreams, always with the spiral, always waiting. And last week, I got another card. This time, it wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to my niece. She's 6. She's never even eaten prawns. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. If you haven't already, I'll see you again with another horror story. Until then, bye.